we are good to go. Now, if you saw my topic, it said, do what you must. Even when nothing looks right. Hey, Iris. Hey, Anthony. Even when nothing looks right, you have to keep moving, right? Because when we look around what's going on right now, and I am not a political girly, I never was. My soon to be ex husband is. But one thing about me is that I pay attention to what's going on around me and I act in the way I can control. Just because you're not political in the sense of some people, that's their life. They are into politics and they do things and they act certain ways, but that's not me. I come from a place where I am more, I empathize a lot with people and listen to them. And my communication skills are different than most, but I do pay attention to what's going on around me. But just because things around you are not going right, that does not mean you do not keep moving forward. It's like telling me that just because like you're on a bridge and it's falling down, you're close to stable ground, you're going to stay there because you're frozen by what's happening. And that's the example I want you to keep in mind. When things are crumbling and not looking right around you, I need you to keep moving forward anyway, because you not doing that, it's a choice. Okay. I tell people all the time, you're in action. And when things are not going right, it really is a choice that you are making, whether consciously, but and subconsciously. So you have to be very mindful about how you decide to approach, and I never stop doing what you need to do just because your environment does not look like the outcome you're working toward. Because right now, a lot of people, the outcome and things that are happening right now, none of us, a lot of us did not want this. A lot of us are not happy about certain things that are happening, but that does not mean that you stop working towards what you do want. And you have to be mindful of that and be very careful of how you process some information, because a lot of things that we are dealing with right now, it is data to know how to move forward in the future. So you have to grasp that and you have to understand that. And you can't wait for motivation. You can't wait for support to get you to act the way you do. And you can't wait for conditions to be perfect, because if we were waiting for conditions to be perfect, believe me, a lot of people would not be parents. Because oftentimes, when you become a new parent, one thing that was told to me is, "Oh, it never happens when you want it to happen. You're gonna be great, right?" So you can't wait for conditions to be perfect. Sometimes things happen, and you have to roll with it and start taking decisive action, because we are all too reactive and not taking certain things into account. We're not taking into account that most of us knew, well, that things that are happening were going to be a possibility, but everybody wanted to wait to see if it happened to react. And that's where I'm telling you, you cannot stop doing what you need to do just because your environment does not look like the outcome you're working toward. You knew a lot of these things may have happened and you have to proceed accordingly. Hey JK gaming fact on TikTok. Yes. So these are the things I want you to think about. And I say this to say that this applies to leadership, to life, and especially growing an organization or a company. So this is why, like, even in my business, I talk about these things is oftentimes you don't want in your leadership role that you are slowing down just because something does not look like what you want it to look. Because progress is not going to be glamorous, right? And it never is. It never looks like you what you want it to look. Just like in our personal lives, in actual life, we're living it. It does not look like how we want it to look. Growth of a company, growth of an organization, it's always going to be messy at the beginning, but when that organization or company is expanding, you have to think about the tools that you have and the tools you need to update so you can expand with it. And in the same token, where you are right now, you have to think about where you are as a person and how you can use the tools you have to change your environment. Okay. So that expansion or that change in environment, it's going to come with choices and how you decide to take action. Right. And now this is a conversation I am happy to have with people subscribe to my membership and different things like that, because one thing is that most of these platforms are censored. So there's some conversations I will be very, very, very um, close guarded in how I express them. But if you're part of my membership, which is on Stan Store, definitely will email about it. We can definitely talk some more about it and have conversations, because we have a community where we have a board and you can comment and things like that. We can definitely have conversations about these things, because one tenet I follow to the best of my abilities are the tenets of stoicism. Control what you can control and worry about what you can worry about. The rest is like you can't do anything about it. So what can I control? What can you control? Now, and when I talk about what you can control, I'm going to pivot and talk about how systems are something you can control in your company and organization. So we're going to talk about that and how oftentimes they'll feel unnecessary, right? For a lot of companies and organization until something stops working. And that's where I'm going to call you. I'll call you on the carpet and just start talking about how systems may help you avoid these things breaking in the first place. Like I've used oftentimes the example of restaurants, because a lot of people are familiar with the restaurant industry, because if you have not been to a restaurant yet, then I don't know what to say. Like even McDonald's, they have systems in place. Because when you think about it, they have an ordering process. They have a system that they follow, like onboarding and things like that. So when the systems are not expanding with a certain company or organization, it breaks in the same. I support nonprofits and for profits. Nonprofits, for some reasons, they tend to think they're exempt from this, but it applies to them even more, considering that their revenue generation, it looks different than a for profit company. Okay. So people can't a lot of people, you'll notice, like when an organization is expanding and some systems are missing, a lot of people will quit, especially if you have staff already. They'll quit when things start looking out of order. I've used this example before. When I was a project director at a nonprofit, we had a staff member, and she would ask questions about how this organization does it differently. But the organization was a multi-million organization. And the organization I was the project director at was making less than $1 million, right? Between 300 and 600 K is what they were making, but they were making significantly less. So one thing that I noticed is, like, oftentimes people that are younger people or people that do not have entrepreneurship experience or business experience, they tend to not understand how the business world works, how money works, right? So when systems are not in place, hey Tiana, when systems are not in place, that's when you're going to see things not working, and people that are not familiar with the whole back end of the operation will start quitting because things don't look right. She was upset because the organization did not have a washing machine to wash the outreach tablecloth like the organization she was referring to. So that goes to show a lot of people will not understand. So you still need to have systems in place to address certain things, certain issues that come up. So, based on that conversation alone, I had to come up with a system or a process for how to deal with tablecloths with the staff. So that question didn't come up again, and there wasn't a level of misunderstanding with stuff afterwards. But it is when you'll see a lot of people quit, when things look out of order, when systems are missing. Now, so if you have a nonprofit leader who wants grants but does not track the data, what happens is that the environment for them to apply for grant looks not ready. So it's going to look like it's not ready for a lot of them, and it's going to make them pause on applying for this grant because they didn't build their readiness because they weren't tracking data. They didn't have systems in place to ensure this was happening in the midst of building. So, a lot of times people don't think about how operations is important to the overall health of a business or a nonprofit is a business, so a business. So it's not how they don't think about how operations is really important to the overall health of the business. So that's when you have environments not matching the vision, right? And that's when you have organizations and, well, businesses not being able to grow. So when that environment doesn't match, it won't match until you build the systems to support it. Because if you build the systems to match the vision that you have, let's say that your vision is to support 2,000 women in the South Dallas area. I don't know if it's an area because I've never lived in Dallas, right? So let's say that's an area, and you you have that vision to serve that many women, but do you have the systems to support that vision that you have by, let's say, 2030? How are you going to accomplish that? What systems do you have in place to ensure? Do you have a system to ensure there's outreach happening to get people in the doors for you to service them? Did you think about that, right? Or did you think about systems that you would need to bring people in to support these women that you're planning on helping? So, all of these little things are things that happen. And if you are not adjusting the systems to fit that vision, it's going to be very difficult for the company to actually grow and go in the direction that you want it to go. So, these are things I want you to think about. So, that's why some people stop when circumstances look messy, like a business or will be growing and it looks messy. A lot of people will stop and start thinking of what they're doing wrong, right? And how they're wasting their time, why they're overwhelmed, not knowing where to start. And actually, like, the other thing that I know people do a lot at some stages, they start comparing their businesses to other people who are further ahead, or maybe other organizations that started at the same time. They start comparing the two organizations about what did that person do right, right? So it's not really about the conditions that you're in, it's about the decisions that you made. Did you make decisions to support the vision that you had? And that's the only thing that you need to start considering. Did you make the decisions that would take you to the next level? And these decisions usually start with operations, because you may fear doing it wrong, but you don't know what you don't know. And if you don't seek the help because of pride, because of ego, that's going to be your downfall. And I see that too many times across these platforms where some people are like, I don't need the help. I can Google it. If you could have Googled it, you would have been successful already. Okay. Because then Google will take you a couple of years. If you're not willing to wait a couple of years before you see the result, then you need to figure out what you're doing wrong. And that fear, you need to put it at bay and realize that um, there's some risks and some decisions you need to make to get there. And wasting time, that comes with not acknowledging that you're doing it wrong or not being okay with that. And all of that bleeds into how you become overwhelmed as well. So these are things I want you to think about. Okay. Now, for I know I gave my example, right? The example of when I work with a nonprofit. So the other thing I want to share is a personal example of my consulting business while working a full-time job. Now, for that to happen, I had to build systems and have certain things in place to ensure that I am able to do that. A lot of people don't know I work in public health as well. I'm a public health professional, and but I have systems in place to ensure that my business is able to succeed regardless of other things that I'm doing. So you have to think about how the systems can support the work that you're doing and ensure that you're able to get your business moving forward in the direction it wants to. And if you're new here, I refer to nonprofit organizations and businesses as well because they are businesses. So just catch up a little bit. So if I say businesses, nonprofits, for profits, all of them are businesses, right? So, and the other thing, it's that I kept showing up despite personal challenges. And that was made easier for me with the systems I had in place. Because if I didn't have certain systems in place or certain automations in place to support the work that I do in my consulting business, it would make it very hard for me, and I would be the type of person that shows up and disappears, right? So systems usually support what you're doing, and automations also make it easier. So it's like if your organization and if your business has not adopted certain systems to support its vision yet, then you're doing something wrong. Because one thing I didn't do, I didn't wait for someone else to sign off on my dream to decide I'm going to go for it. And that's the thing I want people to realize is like, you have to do it anyway. You can't wait for someone to tell you it's okay to go. Because if you don't do it, who's going to do it for you? Or if you don't decide to move forward, who's going to move forward with you? People are just going to look at you and be comfortable because some people are comfortable in complacency. I'm not. Because one thing I am not going to do is sit on my two thumbs and not do what I'm supposed to do just because things around me don't look right. I saw a post today of somebody that felt uncomfortable posting on social media for what? Why are you uncomfortable? Because then we're still posting, but on the back end, we're taking care of business and showing up in these rooms, these legislative rooms, and trying to make change. So you have to do it anyway, because if you are thinking or fearing what people think of you when they are not doing better than you, then you're going to be stuck in a position where these people are not going to come save you. Are they going to pay your bills moving forward? No, they're not. So you have to make decisions for yourself and not wait on anyone to sign off on your dream. Because one thing about me is I took consistent and perfect action. Sometimes did I make mistakes? Yes. Did I say the wrong things? Yes. Did I have some horrible systems in place? Yes, but it's trial and error. And that's what helped me figure out how to ensure that my businesses or the clients I had throughout 2024 and 2025 were able to move in a way that was strategic and also supporting their vision. And the one thing I will also say is that when you have a plan in place and you have um, systems in place, if you're not using them how you're supposed to use them, then that's on you. So do not wait for the environment to look perfect, because if I had done that, I would still be waiting. Okay. If I was waiting for anyone to give me support that they weren't going to give me, and oftentimes people are like, well, I have to see what my husband thinks. You know how many times my soon to be ex husband, I didn't even ask him what he thought. I just did it because that's what I wanted to do, because I'm an individual before I was a wife at the time, before I was a mom, I was an individual. So sometimes don't look at your environment to tell you what you need to do to move forward in life. You make a decision and you make it based on your wants and your vision for your business. Okay. And if you're a big business, you have to think about the vision of the company and see, okay, what decisions do I need to make right now, or what systems do we need to adopt to ensure this corporation is able to move in the direction it needs to go in. Okay. Now, so I gave you my example. Like again, like I don't want people to think my life is perfect and I don't have things going on. Systems are the only, and automations are the only thing that I make sure that I have in place that support the work I do. If I go networking, a lot of people think, okay, that's a lot of cards, but people don't understand. I have an app, right? If I scan the information, my CRM will send them an email the day after to say, hey, don't forget about me. This is where I met you. This is what I do. Let's connect. Right. So things that you usually would forget, when you have automations and certain systems in place, it supports you so you can do better. Now, examples of organizations. Some organizations, they want to, or some businesses, they want to expand, right? They want to expand, but they have no systems, no documentation, no workflows in place whatsoever. Like they have none of these things in place, no KPIs. And when I ask them what KPIs are, Like, they don't know. Like, key performance indicators, you should have these indicators to tell you if you're going in the right direction. That's what a KPI is. So, let's say you have a marketing plan, right? You're on X or Instagram and you're posting. What is your goal for posting? What are you trying to accomplish on social media, right? What KPIs are you tracking to make sure you're hitting certain milestones, right? So these are the things. So when organizations want to expand and they don't even have these things, it's a huge red flag. And that's why they can be sometimes stuck in a place where they're not progressing. So you need to think about, okay, maybe it's not the perfect moment that I need to wait, but I need to build the conditions for my company and my business to succeed. Okay. So, what systems can you have in place? Can you implement? And what can you document? And what workflows do you need to have in place? If you've never heard of what a workflow is, like think about the process or journey that you go through when you're like implementing a program. So, let's say you have a program for single moms to learn a new skill, right? So, what's the process? What's the journey that these mothers go through when they come to your organization? Okay, so they meet with the intake person. They do this, they do that. So, you have to map out this journey and think of what actions need to happen, repeatable steps that you can automate, and think of the workflow. So, this is the work I do with some of my clients. Sometimes we have to come down, like sit down and really think about the journey, and once we map out the journey, we figure out the workflows that are necessary and start creating systems around that or automations to support their work. Okay, so these are the things I want you to start thinking about. And again, stop waiting for the perfect moment. Okay. And for those who are just coming in, hashtag live, these things love engagement. So hashtag live, let me know where you're joining from. I would love to know. And TikTok loves engagement, and Facebook loves this mess. So, and Substack, I'm using Substack, but Engage as well because that's I'm trying to figure out Substack. So, if you're a nonprofit and you're looking to be funder ready, right? You need to improve your funding readiness. There are certain things you need to have in place. Like, why don't you have a grant calendar? Why aren't you tracking data? Right? You may not know what to track, but that's where you start. You need to have someone on your operations team that is looking at this information to support what you're doing and where you're trying to go, right? Why don't you have any reporting systems? And why are the outcomes not documented? And the other thing I'm going to say about outcomes, sometimes like organizations don't even define what a successful outcome looks like. Hey Kiki, hey Chris, of what that looks like. Hey, who is this? Leash Good, Henry. Hey y'all. So you need to start thinking about these things, especially if you're trying to get your nonprofit to become funder ready, right? You can't stop doing the work because your environment doesn't mirror the results you want. So you want to get funders, you're not getting funded. That means you stop working, you stop tracking data. No, you need to create this environment. You need to create this moment that positions you for success. Because then, if you do not, then it's going to make it difficult for you to even achieve that level of readiness that you are seeking. Okay. So these are things I want you to think about. Think about how your team's performing. Think about your job as a leader and how you can ensure that your team is doing what they need to be doing and performing better. Think about how to keep yourself accountable, right? Because then oftentimes when you have a team that's not performing, do they have a level of clarity? Hey, Basra, do they have a level of clarity around their job? Do they even know what their job is? Because I kid you not, I remember I had a job and they had no idea what I was supposed to do. So every now and then they would be like, "Hey, Stacy, what are you doing today? We need help with XYZ." At this point, it's not my fault. It's the leader's fault because now you didn't clarify what the job role and responsibility was. So again, As a leader, you have a role and you need to also keep yourself accountable. Okay. You need to have some onboarding systems in place to ensure if you have a new team member that comes in, that you are covering some things that are necessary for them to succeed. Because you may have someone who is doing a bad job as per your opinion, but they're only doing what you told them to do or what you trained them to do. So sometimes you have to look at self. Okay. And that's the way we support our clients here at Savage Coaching and Consulting. We audit the gaps that exist, right? We audit your company, your business, your organization to see what systematic gaps that you have and how we can close them and improve your operations overall. Because when you don't do that, that's where I see most leaders get stuck because they're doing the work, but they're not doing the necessary work because they have not closed certain gaps that exist that stops them from doing what they need to do. So, um, there's a difference between activity and alignment. I know a lot of people may have heard, hey, Zafira, a lot of people may have heard the word, it's not in alignment. It's not in alignment. But one thing I'm going to say about that is that most leaders, they will stay busy, but the ones who actually will grow are the ones that do what's necessary. Because if there is activity, but there's not alignment with where you're trying to go, that's when you'll see missteps happen or a lack of intentional growth happening, right? There needs to be a level of strategic clarity. Like you need to be clear about certain things, but you need to be very strategic about how you're sharing this information. Is there a system in place to ensure that this level of clarity is among everybody on the team to support the growth you're trying to accomplish? Is there operational alignment in place where people know exactly how they're supposed to operate, how the company is supposed to operate, and how everything aligns, right? Because if that doesn't exist, it's going to be very difficult. And there needs to be a system infrastructure in place to support the overall operation. Because if you do not have an infrastructure in place, a system infrastructure where you don't have the systems in place to support the work that's actually happening in your business, in your company, then it's going to be very, very difficult for you to accomplish this level of operational alignment. Okay. So, I want you to think about the work that we do. We support nonprofits with different aspects, but one way that we help them accomplish strategic clarity is with our strategic planning and operational planning engagement. Because one thing I am very, very adamant about is a lot of people will want to get a strategic plan only to have that strategic plan stay in their Google Drive where they're not using it. It just looks pretty. It just has pretty graphics and everything. And so the strategic plan to me is by itself is not enough because it's only knowing what needs to happen, right? When you know what needs to happen, does that mean you will do what needs to happen? That's a question I want you to ask yourself. And if you're watching live, feel free to comment. Just because you know what needs to happen, does that mean it happens? That is my question to you. And definitely drop it in the comments or chat wherever you are to let me know what your thoughts are about that before I move on to the definition of operational planning and why that's included in our engagement. So, with operational planning, why we do that is when we have a strategic planning engagement, we also include operational planning, which is why our engagement will take about 8 to 12 months because operational planning is knowing how it will happen. Because when you know what needs to happen, the problem is understanding how it will happen. And unless you audit your certain gaps, it's hard for you to actually move forward and actually make it happen, actually implement this whole big picture. So, the strategic plan, when you know what needs to happen, you also need the operational plan and knowing how it will happen. So you can assess your capacity and actually make it happen. And the systems, it's what ensures it happens consistently. Because then our company, Savage Coaching and Consulting, will help you with the strategic planning and operational planning aspect, which is the plan phase, right? But the implementation phase is also important, and systems can actually help you with that and overall operational support. So these are things that Savage Coaching and Consulting helps with. They help with both aspects. So our job is to help companies, organizations not wait for the perfect moment, but actually build the structure that creates the result. So that's why you should reach out to us, or definitely book a consultation with me so we can talk about what results you're looking for and how to build the structure to ensure that these things are happening within your company. So with that said, definitely let me know if you have any questions, and yeah, book a consultation. You can definitely, you'll see the link in my bio. You can definitely go to that. And I want you to remember before I close, what time is it? I definitely need to go pick up my little one now. So before I close, I want you to remember that your environment will catch up to your discipline, right? So if you lack discipline, your environment will catch up to that. So you need systems that help you catch up to your consistency. So you need to be consistent, but systems will help you do that. And and remember that you never should stop doing what's necessary just because your circumstances don't look like your outcomes yet. You have to build the environment you want by doing the work anyway. And with that said, I am going to start heading out. If you have any questions, feel free to write them in the comments, or feel free to send me a DM, and I look forward to chatting with each and every one of you. Let me get ready to close out all these different lives. Okay, bye Facebook, bye Substack.